Welcome in to the bi-monthly wrap-up, but it's book slump edition. I'm just going to say it now at the top of the video so that I don't sound like a broken record throughout the entire video. I've been in a book slump, a bad one, for the last few months. I think I'm finally, maybe slightly crawling my way out of it, but a lot of these reads, they were affected by the book slump. There are some really good books in here that I absolutely adored, but there are quite a lot of books that I am gonna sound like a broken record and I'm gonna say over and over again. It was probably good, but I was in a book slump. So I'm gonna try and be as objective as possible because a lot of these books just fell victim. Nonetheless, despite being in a pretty bad book slump, I still read a fair amount. I've read 14 books over the last 2 months. I just didn't necessarily enjoy them as much as I thought I might. But with that in mind, we're going to go through all of them, and I think we're going to start on a positive note because it's going to go downhill after that. Let's start with Sea of Tranquility. This is a tiny little dystopia sci-fi book that everybody sold to me as being incredibly weird to the point of almost not being able to follow it. So I kind of went in with not the best expectations. I feel like I'd heard really mixed things. I loved it. I loved it so much. I didn't find it confusing. I think there are lots of elements that you're not necessarily going to know straight away. I think it might take you a minute to get into it, to fully understand what's going on. But I kind of, maybe it's because of how prepared I was, maybe I almost even over-prepared, which might be why I just didn't find it as confusing as I was expecting to. And actually, I loved the reading experience of this. I can't really explain the plot to you. It's basically following a bunch of people through time and space, and they all kind of interconnect, maybe somehow. You'll get there eventually. But trust the process. I don't think it's as confusing as people had maybe told me. Either way, I think stick with it, trust the process. The writing is gorgeous and the ending is so profound and beautiful. And I want to read more from this author. Okay, where should we go next? I picked up Nightbitch by Rachel Yoder for the simple fact of I am now obsessed with books about motherhood, specifically dark portrayals of motherhood. Ever since the nursery, it's my new thing. So I picked this up with the highest of hopes, and as I warned you in the introduction, it fell very much victim to the book slump. This is a strange little book about a woman turning into a dog. Maybe as a metaphor, maybe not. It's a bit fever dreamy. I think if you're a fan of Bunny by Mona Awad, which I very much am, it's probably a read for you. It's strange, but just know that going in and you'll be fine. The writing is very cyclical. It's very, very stream of consciousness. So this plot, she's in no rush, babe. It's character driven, and I think for the book slump, that didn't work for me. But the quotes were gorgeous, the theme was gorgeous, and I'm definitely going to read more from this author, but I think maybe a situation of right book, wrong time, unfortunately. But that one's on me. Then, I mean, these aren't in any particular order, but I knew that I needed something that wasn't literary fiction. And so I picked up something that I was just craving. And this is why we mood read, people, because this did it for me. This made me feel like I wasn't in a book slump. I read The Crimson Moth and I ate it up. I feel like everyone has already read this. I'm like the last person to pick this up, but it is a very popular romantasy enemies to lovers duology following a witch and a witch hunter. They both kind of suspect each other. They're trying to kill each other. The tension is beautiful. It is properly enemies to lovers and it delivers. I did guess the plot twist of this around maybe like the halfway mark, but I still think it's a good plot twist. I had fun, and it was just everything I needed it to be. It was fun, it was fast, it was short chapters. It's relatively reminiscent of the few fantasy books that I have read, but in like a really fun, recognisable way. Like there were recognisable tropes and moments that I really enjoyed, but then the main character and the world building felt really unique, so it kind of felt like a spin on the fantasy worlds that we already know. I'm not a huge fantasy reader, but this is the best one that I've read in a long time. I literally love this. I ate it up. And it was the first book in a long time that made me feel like I wasn't in a book slump. Next, I read The 7-Year Slip. Now, on top of being in a book slump, I have been in a romance slump for way longer. I think I'm deciding that it's maybe just not my genre. I like them occasionally, and I think I need to keep them that way. And I think at the start of my booktube journey, I bought too many because it was all that I saw recommended, and I know how much people love a romance book, so I went out and bought all these romance books. Anytime I found one in a charity shop, I picked it up because I'd heard of it, and now I have a massive backlog. And I think for me, they're great as like an occasional read. So this was my occasional romance that I picked up. Again, very heavily affected by the book slump, not to mention the romance slump, but all of that being said, I enjoyed it. I think objectively speaking, this and Out on a Limb are my two favourite romance books that I've read in a long old time. Probably, maybe ever. And I think that's because they have such gorgeous writing, but also heavy plots. This one is magical realism about a like magical apartment. There's a slip in time and she meets this guy in her apartment from 7 years in the future or the past. One of them. I think particularly if romance is your genre, I would really, really recommend this one. Then, before I forget, the only book that I don't physically own, I read The Unworthy, which is by Agustina Bazterrica, who is the author of Tender is the Flesh. This book, I struggled with this in the same way that I struggled with The Natural Way of Things. Both books really centre violence against women, and while those are such important stories, it is just so difficult to read. And both of these books gave me this constant feeling of like ickiness and like itching of the skin and just really quite unpleasant reading experiences. All intentional, like the authors meant that, but it's not a fun reading experience. This one is about a group of women, and our main character is keeping a secret diary, and she's kind of writing about how the women in this kind of complex are treated. There's some like leader of this group, and he's just referred to him, I think they just call him he. And he's the only man there. Everyone else is women. There's lots of levels, and I think our main character is kind of trying to get to the next level. I think they're called the Enlightened. That's kind of the plot, but it's not really a plot kind of a book. Mostly, this book is just lots of violence, lots of like beatings, and it's very graphic and very difficult to read. If you like a dystopia and you like a horror, it is well written, but just don't go into it lightly because I just really struggled my way through that one. Then we have a little thriller. I read The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I have owned this one for so long, and I think I was kind of putting it off. I don't really know why. This so pleasantly surprised me. I had so much fun with this one. It's a thriller set on an island, and we're following a wedding party, and we're following like everyone, the bride, the groom, the wedding planner, friends, sisters, loads of perspectives, so it makes the story really quick paced. And there's a murder, but you don't even know who is dead until like way into the book, so you have loads of theories, but it's almost more fun because you don't even know who the victim is. So it's hard to like guess the plot twist until near the end. I got it a little bit before they revealed it, but only a little bit. It's gloomy, it's atmospheric, and it's fun and twisty and fast. Again, it was just exactly what I needed during the book slump. Then we unfortunately had a DNF. I think it's the only DNF of the 2 months, which is kind of crazy considering the book slump, but there are some in here I maybe should have DNF'd but didn't. But I did DNF The Idiot. This is a book about Harvard University and this woman who goes there. I made it to page 100. In the first 100 pages, we're basically following her going to class and then kind of just discussing the things that she learned. And a lot of that is to do with language. I think she's studying Russian literature, if I remember correctly. So a lot of it is her reading stories and then kind of translating them and just talking about sort of general things that she's learnt. I'll be honest, this book made me feel so stupid. I just didn't understand a whole lot of it. Bits of it I understood and bits of it I found really, really interesting, and there's some quite like funny writing in this. I think she is quite witty, but for where I was at in the book slump, I was in the depths of the book slump. I just thought, you know what? No, not now. I like to think I'll come back to this at some point. I think though, if you're the kind of person who likes learning new things, if you're really interested in like academia and just learning new stuff, or if you have an interest in language and translation, it might be a really good one. The writing's great, it's very witty, but wrong time. So that is unfortunately a DNF for now. Then, very different realm, but another one I did actually really enjoy. See, I did enjoy some of my reading this last few weeks. I don't know, I feel like so much of it feels tainted by the book slump, but there are standouts. And this is one of them. I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I feel like I've been really pleasantly surprised by some of the books. It's almost like all the books I thought wouldn't be for me were, and all the books I thought would weren't. I don't know how that happened. YA mystery, which on paper, nope. Because I don't really read a lot of YA, and I like a thriller, but I don't really love a mystery. Tell me why I love this. This was a book club pick, and when it kind of came up as the book club pick, I was a bit disappointed. I loved this. It was so much fun. This follows, what was her name? Pippa. And she is doing like a final year qualification at school, like a special project. And she is studying the deaths of a couple of her classmates and like the boy who was accused. And she basically believes that he didn't do it, and she kind of teams up with the boy's brother to prove that. And then it's kind of like them investigating throughout the book. At the start, I was like, oh, this reads a little bit young. I don't know if it reads too young for me. The further in I got, I just got more and more and more into it until I was literally hooked. The only complaint I have, and it is a big complaint, is whoever mixed the sound of that audiobook, all of the mixed media parts where we went into voice notes, which was quite a lot of sections, was so quiet. Like, so quiet. To the point where I had to whack the volume right up to even be able to hear it, with or without headphones, which meant that every time we came out of those sections, I got jump scared because suddenly everyone was shouting. It's a small complaint in the big picture, but it was really, really off-putting. Nonetheless, the actual book itself, gorgeous. And again, it was just what I needed. Haven't decided yet whether to continue with this series. I don't have any more on my TBR, and I'm trying to really, really stick to my TBR. If you have opinions, let me know. If you think I should continue. Maybe everyone let me know what your favourite one in the series was, because I know there's 2 more and a novella. So is this the best one, or do they keep getting better? Let me know. Then I read a book called Everyone I Know Is Dying by Emily Slapper. This one is a depiction of mental illness. We're following our main girl, Iris, and in terms of plot, would struggle to tell you. The main thing I remember about this book is that our main character just tells you her every thought. Like, not one singular thought is edited out of this book. It's a very, very, very realistic portrayal of depression, but because nothing is edited out, it is a relatively slow and like slogging feeling book. That's not a word, but it feels like a slog to get through is what I mean, which I think quite a lot of that is intentional because of what the character is going through, but then the reading experience just feels very like slow and like plodding along. I think the mental health representation is great. I think it's very, very accurate. I'm not sure if this is one that I potentially would have enjoyed more had I not been in the book slump, but I did think that the writing style was very, I don't want to say secular, but she just would explain everything, and everything was quite over-explained. It was never just that she went to bed. It was always like she would tell you every single step in her nighttime routine. She would like explain how she brushed her teeth and explain how she put away her things into the cabinet. Like, nothing was brushed over. Next up, we have my most anticipated read of the entire year, and I put this off for a while because of the book slump. Eventually I thought, do you know what? It's gonna get me out the book slump. I'm just gonna read it. Spoiler, it didn't. We have Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I love Sally Rooney. I love all of her books. I think I read this at the wrong time. I really, really do. I can appreciate it for being beautiful writing, as always. I really, as always with all of her books, appreciated the complicated relationships, the character study. It was all gorgeous. But I don't know if it's because it's double the size of all of her other books or the book slump, potentially both. But I did kind of a little bit struggle through this one, which is so sad because I love Sally Rooney. Yeah, I struggled through this one more than the others, but I'm blaming it on the book slump because I would never blame it on Sally Rooney. Ever. This one we're following 2 brothers. One of the brothers is kind of dating 2 women, very different women, and then the younger brother is dating a much older woman. I think she's like 10 years older than him, something like that, and it's kind of about the dynamics in those relationships. I think, generally speaking, I preferred, was it Peter? Yeah, Peter's story slightly. I really enjoyed both, but I think I was more interested in Peter's story. I still tabbed loads, I still really enjoyed it. It wasn't a bad reading experience at all. I think I just kind of wish I'd saved it, but then I'd waited so long to read it, I was just so excited, so I don't know. I will definitely reread it at some point. I want to reread all of Sally Rooney's books because this is the only one that I've tabbed, so I definitely want to tab all of her other books. I think I get a lot of questions about this. I think Conversations with Friends is probably my favourite of hers, which is actually the first one I read, surprisingly. But I don't know if that's just like rose-tinted glasses because I fell in love with Sally Rooney's writing in general, but I always kind of say that one's my favourite. So I don't know. But I love all of them. Next, I read a tiny, tiny, tiny little book that is so special. I Who Have Never Known Men. This is a kind of literary dystopia about a bunch of women in a cage. They have been in the cage pretty much all their lives, or at least as long as they can remember. Our main character is significantly younger than everybody else in the cage, and you're kind of following their dynamics. And it's a story of isolation, of womanhood, and it is the kind of book that will stick with you. And it just feels like something so special and unique. There is pretty much in this entire book one plot point. So go in knowing that there aren't really chapters, there's not really dialogue, it's pretty much just sitting with these women and kind of the things that happen to them, but also not a whole lot happens to them. But it's so special, and I can't even put into words how special it is and how brilliantly it is written. You're just kind of gonna have to trust me on this one. I'm so happy I finally read it because it's another one that I've had on the TBR for a while. Okay, we're nearly done. I've got 3 left. I then read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Yeah, I finally did it. It's a, I guess, fantasy, maybe literary fantasy, historical fiction. I don't really know. We're following Addie, who makes a deal to live forever, but then kind of a consequence of that deal is she's then forgotten by everyone. So it's her going through life, and we kind of meet her many years after she's made this deal. We're following her going through life, floating through the world, never being able to make a relationship. If they, I think, leave the room, they forget who she is. So she can't make any sort of meaningful relationship that lasts more than a day. So she's kind of got some systems in place for how she copes in this world, but then equally how she doesn't cope. This book took me so by surprise. Another one that, again, I wasn't necessarily expecting to love, even though I knew everyone else loved it. I don't know, I think I just have big book fear. And it's rare that I'll say this, but I am gonna say it. I think this book did need to be as long as it is. Often when a book is over 500 pages, it feels a little bit unnecessary to me. I'm just gonna say it. Not every time, and not in this case, but there are a lot of books that are 700, 800, 900 pages long that I often just think, why? This one, it all paid off because you spend so much time with the character. I think the first third of this took me a little bit of time to get into. The first third is very like setup and world building, but you need it. You need it all because it pays off so hard at the end. Next, I read Wayward by Emilia Hart. This is a historical fiction about 3 women throughout time and kind of like connected to the witch trials. We're following one woman in 1619, one in 1942, and then one in present day. It is a gorgeously written book about womanhood, and those themes are just absolutely stunning. It is very well written. I did listen to the audiobook, and I do think that I wish I had read it physically. I think parts of the audiobook just brushed over me a little bit, and I think it would have, for me, hit harder had I read it physically, but I still really enjoyed it. I can still appreciate it as being very objectively well written. As a debut, beautifully written debut. And I think this author has a new book that's just come out called, I want to say The Sirens, or just Sirens. No idea what that book's about. And then last, but by no means least, I adored this book. Notes on an Execution. This is a book that I will now recommend continuously for the rest of time. This book follows Ansel, who is on death row, and we have a few chapters from kind of his perspective, although it's written in second person, and then the majority of the story is told from the women in his life. So his mother, a detective on the case, and a few other women who you kind of meet along the way. I kind of don't want to say too much because this book is so incredibly special. I think other than maybe in the last quarter where the plot slowed down a tiny bit, and I really do mean a tiny bit, this book moved with so much pace, and then that pace was balanced so perfectly with just the most gorgeous writing you've ever seen. It is heartbreaking, and I think the best thing about this book is how complicated everyone in this book is. Nobody is black and white, none of the situations feel black and white, and you find yourself feeling really torn. This book raises some really incredibly important moral questions, and it handles them with so much grace. Please, please, please pick up this book because I just think it is wonderful, and whatever else this author has written, I need to read it. I don't even know if they have anything else, but if they do, I'm gonna read it. There we go, that is our reading done. Let's pick my top 3, I always enjoy doing that. Okay, it's a strange top 3 from me because normally top 3 is dominated by literary fiction. It's not this month. I'm going with these 3. Obviously Notes on Execution I just spoke about. Sea of Tranquility is a sci-fi. Who would have thought that made it to the top 3? And then The Crimson Moth. Again, fantasy is never in my top 3, but these were the real standouts to me. I loved all 3 of these books, and also all 3 are so different, so it's a nice little range going on. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new, please subscribe. I am finally clawing my way out of the book slump, so I have some fun reading vlogs coming up, and I'm pretty excited about some of them, so you should subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video, comment, all of that fun stuff, and I will catch you in the next one. I love you, goodbye!